Hello friends, welcome to Mu Sessions. I'm Sai Srinu. Today I like to discuss about the concept called error handlers. So this is the number sixth in series of error handling. Okay. So why these error handlers are required? So in the error handling concept, these error handlers plays a very crucial role, right? So there is a flow, is a mule flow, and this mule flow contains event source, event processors, and every flow contains a error handling section. So here you can find error handling section, right? So while processing a message, and if you get any error while processing a message, the control comes to error handling section, right? So these error handlers, like we discussed in the previous session, each error handler is backed by an error type. So these are responsible to manage a specific kind of error, right? So this is the background of error handlers. In the mule, you can find two types of error handlers. One is on error continue and on error propagate. So depends upon your requirement, you need to configure either continue or propagate. So we see different scenarios where we need to continue or we need to propagate. Okay. So assume uh, you are doing one transaction, and in the part of the transaction you are calling your client web service, and afterwards you are storing the information that is written from the client web service to the database. And this entire transaction you're doing, at the end of transaction, what you're doing is you are simply logging the transaction to a file. So it's not required, but as part of this audit or something, like you are logging the transaction to a file. So if the final transaction fails while logging to the file, you got an error, and you're logging to a any other source, you got an error. So you can't roll back entire thing because this is not a critical event in your transaction, right? So you can't roll back the thing you stored in the database, because even it is not happen, that's fine. You can go ahead, like when the transaction complete successfully. So in that case, you need to configure on error continue to handle this kind of errors. So the meaning is your critical part is completed, right? And this is an additional one. Even it fails, you don't bother about that one. In that case, we need to configure on error continue. Even it fails, you can treat this transaction as successful. In that case, you configure on error continue. Okay, take another scenario. While invoking a web service, you got an error. So this is a very critical task in this implementation. When you got an error while invoking web service itself, you can't say that the transaction is successful. You need to send error back, boss. I'm not able to process your request due to I got some error of calling web service, and you need to send the error response back to client, right? You can't say that error is your transaction is successful. In these scenarios, you need to configure on error propagate. You need to propagate the error back to client, right? So this is a core difference where we need to configure continue and where we need to configure propagate. You will configure continue when the core things are over, right? Even this task fails, even this processing, this event processor fails, that doesn't bother. You can treat as a transaction successful. In that scenarios, you configure that as an honor continue. Okay. Next, we see, and here there are different scenarios. There is an primary flow and inner flow. See, in the primary flow, this is a flow reference. that is referring inner flow, right? So from the client you get the request to the primary flow, and inner flow is referred, while inner flow it is requesting some other web service. Okay, and it is the response and everything successful, and so you got the response. That response is sent back to client. This is happy path without any error, right? It follows like that. And next come to, if you got an error, so from the client who got request, and inner flow is referred, and while invoking web service you got an error, so this component is error out. When this component is error out, and that is propagated back to here. So the thing is, uh, this component error out, the error is called http not found. Okay, http not found, because this resource is not found. And how it is propagated back to here, that is handled by the error handler of this flow, right? Not found, this log executed, and this error handler type is on error propagate. So if it is on error propagate, the error is propagated back to parent flow, right? And here, from this error handler to control comes to parent flows error handler, on error continue, http not found. So this matches, this error matches http not found and http not found, and control comes from here. Here in the parent flow, see, this is on error continue. Okay, if this is on error continue, means that even this web service is not executed properly, and you can treat this transaction successful, and that you can send the success response back to client. So if this is your requirement, then you can configure the error handler as on error continue. And next we see one more scenario. See the same thing, and while invoking this service you got an error. Now you got different kind of error, that is unauthorized, means you are not authorized to invoke this service. So there is corresponding error handler for unauthorized errors to handle those kind of errors. So the control comes over here, and this is got executed, right? And this is on error continue. Okay, and this is as is on error continue. The error is not propagated back to parent flow. From this treat as success, and this return success response to client. Some static response is set over here. This response is sent back to client. So invoke this request, and the response is sent back to client. Whatever response you set here, that is sent back to client. Okay. And we will example one more scenario. Here, this child flow is referred, and this request is invoking a service. Okay. The thing is, maybe you are invoking the service as a post method, but this service is only accept as a get method. It's not a post method. This post is not allowed, assume. Okay, and you got a different kind of error, like method not found, something kind, that kind of error, method not allowed, that error will get, right? So method not allowed error handler is not there to handle those kind of errors. There is no error handler defined in this flow, right? So these two error handlers are not able to handle that kind of error. So, and if you see in the parent also, there is no such kind of error handler. So now the error is propagated back to client, right? And error client will receive the error. This is one kind of scenario. Okay. If you see the error handler, let me show you in the AnyPoint Studio. So this is called error handler. you can drag and drop the error handler. If you go to component palette and if you type on error, so there are two kinds of error handlers: on error, continue error, propagate. Right? You can drag in any kind of error handler like this in the flow, and if you click on this any error handler, so the corresponding property section is shown as here. Right? You need to configure the error that is backed on this error handler, what kind of errors you are handling through this error handler. Okay, and if you see that hand errors over here, see it is, if you see here, there are database and file related errors. You can select any specific error, or you can make this error handler to handle any kind of errors. Right? And next, there are two things you can do. You can select either this one, or you can give an expression. So in this scenario, I'm showing over here, I'm configuring an expression. So if you want to handle that error, all HTTP related errors, okay, the namespace is HTTP. You want to handle all HTTP namespace related error, you have to configure the error handler like this: error dot error type dot namespace is equal to HTTP. So in that case, here it will handle all HTTP related errors. Is this file HTTP not found, or unauthorized, or method not allowed? It will handle all those kind of errors. Right. So this is about error handlers. Thank you so much for watching my session. Thanks a lot. See you in the next session. Bye.